Good afternoon. So today with me, I've got Simon Heaysman. He is the co-founder of Hayylo, one of the fastest growing startups in our aged care environment. So welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you on board for the 2021 year of the creative.
Thanks so much, Beck. It's great to spend a little bit of time with you and your audience today.
We did just have a tech fail before where we started, so we're just about to regenerate and do the intro again. Lucky I'm actually not in tech. I'm here to support people, not on the function side of things. So as part of this, I just want to speak about kind of in the startup land, what is your elevator pitch to support startups who can't kind of finite their message if they come in front of a provider and they've literally got 30 seconds to pitch their business?
Yeah, that's great, Beck. You're putting me on the spot. So it's been a little while since I've done our elevator pitches, to be honest with you. But look, Hayylo enhances connection through communication. We are the conduit between the care provider and the community, enabling people to stay connected to their services and informed and engaged along their care journey. You know, it's really what Hayylo is about, is enabling better engagement, better connection, and keeping people closer together, you know, through their services.
Absolutely. And I met Hayylo a couple of years ago now on the Care Factor program for Bentleys, which is an incredible incubator that Bentleys have established. And I guess seeing your guys' journey, because you were one of the more advanced startups within that program, and bringing you into one of the largest aged care providers in Queensland in that not-for-profit space, and just watching you guys thrive has just like honestly been the most heartwarming thing ever, and changing the way that organisation essentially communicates, and going from suboptimal, especially through COVID, and supporting them to still engage and communicate and keep that connection point between the staff members and the clients is significant. So do you want to just talk a little bit about how you were able to pivot during COVID?
Yeah, look, you know, the COVID experience has been really interesting, and kind of as you were talking about, you know, Greg was saying something in a webinar the other day just around, you know, communication creates awareness and awareness creates new behaviour. And in a way, the world's changed for us all through COVID. I'm in Victoria today, back into another 5-day lockdown. And that just presented, you know, new challenges to a sector that already has a lot of challenges to it. You know, that specific project and what we worked on there with the team in Queensland was really about a quick mobilisation of not just enhanced, but connected communication. So enabling multiple channels of communication to be deployed across, you know, massive amounts of people within the community. So a very quick overview of the project. You know, we spun up a contact center, we enabled the technology behind it, but at the same time, we had to bring the care provider in, the contact center team, and also the family, and of course, the customer or client themselves. So it was a very complex deployment. It was kind of like we usually take about 12 weeks to deploy the Hayylo platform to get it started at a provider, and I think we did it in a number of, you know, days to weeks up there in Queensland. So that one took some late nights and some heavy thinking, funnily enough.
And a big gold star on all of your checks for that, because yeah, it was incredible how quickly you were able to turn that around. Yeah.
It's look, we've been very lucky to build, you know, systems and processes that are scalable, and we have repeatable processes that we can lean into when we need to, and that was a great result for us and an opportunity to really just see what we can do under pressure like that.
Absolutely. So as a startup, people are looking for those quick wins, obviously, because from a financial standpoint, you need them to effectively to continue to operate. But how important is it for you to build relationships in these early stages to really achieve that sustainable growth?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I haven't found the quick win yet. To be honest with you, not in aged care, no, not in community services, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But you know, I think again, for us, the interesting elements of I think what we did across our journey was, you know, having an understanding of the relationship, understanding of the brand, you know, understanding that, you know, as you try and become something that you may not know, you know, what you are yet, leaning into the relationships, leaning into the community, be part of that community, being at the events, the awards, the conferences. Granted, a little harder to do that these days, it was really cornerstone because, I actually remember, I think when I first met you, I think you had introduced us as the Hayylo boys, Greg and I, the two co-founders. And so, we built up this reputation, we built up this persona, I guess, around ourselves. And we've been very marketing forward, digital forward in our journey. And I think that's allowed us also to leverage the social elements, but also the face-to-face elements. And we did, in the early days, probably a little prematurely, used to fly around the country just for sales meetings, and this was kind of coming out of our back pockets, Greg and I, in the early days. But we did that because we got to shake everybody's hands and meet everybody across the way.
Absolutely. And so I guess going back to the start of you and Greg and how you founded Hayylo, do you want to give us just a little bit of background in your journey of how it was all established?
Yeah, for sure. So, Greg was working with some really big international tech and contact center players overseas. I was in a similar kind of world here in customer service and contact centers as well. So we kind of have that, telephony background a little bit in us. Got together and said, hey, let's do something. We've been talking about doing something for many years. And funnily enough, at the same time, both of our families were navigating the home care continuum. And, both, even though our families had kind of different core problems, my family was disconnected by geography. So we're all spread out, whereas Greg's family all managed the care of his grandmother within her home. And I think his mother has 11 or 12 brothers and sisters, 3 of which are nurses. So the complexity of that environment was pretty self-explanatory. So coming together, we felt, I guess in an essence, once removed as grandchildren in the process. We wanted to help, we wanted to have a voice, but our family felt a little bit disconnected, involving us in that. And then as we dug in a little bit more to what was really going on, the lack of choice or preference or the confusion around the services and what you could have and, who was coming and when, and all of these just kind of little basic things that we knew from peripheral sectors were the norm. I could pick up the phone, I could access my bill on the phone, I could pay for it. These kind of technologies that are in peripheral sectors like retail, we were kind of a little bit baffled of why they weren't in the aged care world. And so our job was to be best of breed technology and kind of bring that into the sector, really.
Excellent. And I guess around that engaging provider space, because I know on LinkedIn the other day, there was a comment made by Julie, who's the seniors channel, and it is a really cliquey and niche industry, and it is who you know and how you start to develop those relationships and build a persona for yourself and the organization. And it's for that authenticity. So I guess, how did you get past that first barrier that a lot of startups are struggling with right now?
Yeah, look, I think, one, there is the 100% correct. Look, there's an element, we were talking about the digital conferences recently in the sector, and we were just talking about that pivot, that evolution of the conference game, because prior to late 2020, I'm losing track of the years now, if you weren't at the conferences, you didn't exist. And that kind of was the mentality that was out there. You had to be in front. So, those things were and still are very kind of important to build those relationships. And I think, the relationship gets you in the door. The relationship gets you the opportunity to talk and to say your bit. But really the next part comes with the domain knowledge and how much you understand the problem and what your process is to execute. Everyone can come up with 1,000 ideas, but I don't know how many people or my friends call me now saying, hey, I've got an idea for an app. And I'm like, cool, I'll speak to you in 5 years after you've executed. There's very much, it's what you do next that comes along with it. And I think it takes the right questioning and then the right team and then the right processes and all those kind of things to really understand the problem that you're trying to solve. I think we went too wide at the start. We probably made all the mistakes a startup makes in the early days, and you wish you could have your time again, but really drilling into that core problem you're trying to solve, understanding that as well as you can, but also understanding the other barriers outside of the problem. How can you actually get that thing to happen, in the sector?
Excellent. And I guess from a digital engagement perspective, how important is it for you to be present on a platform where providers have access to you digitally? And if you're not there, you need to get there and invest in those areas.
I've been a champion of this across the sector for a very, very long time. And I remember back in the early grassroots LinkedIn days, when I was on LinkedIn doing my connections and all these kind of things, I was baffled by, and still am now to a degree, I don't want to give the secret sauce away, but by the lack of activity on social channels. Now, in the early days, it was probably right because I think I was the only one there. I think I was kind of talking to myself a lot of the time. But, you know, as COVID has come through and everything, the world has moved online from food to, you know, whatever else, the opportunities there now in that space, you know, are second to none. And I just think unless you're investing there, there's no real other way that you can engage in close proximity to key stakeholders within organizations, you know, very quickly and very efficiently, especially for a younger group. Like we did it all for years without any marketing budget, for years and years, you know, and we just did that through the work that you can do on those social platforms.
Yeah, fantastic. So I went out to the startup community on LinkedIn and I wanted them to kind of send in a few questions. So I'm just going to rattle them off for you.
Please.
Well,
I know I was going to say, here we go. I might have to call in tech support or something for this, but we'll see how we go.
We needed that earlier, so don't worry about it.
Exactly.
So someone's asked some number of customers that have paid money to purchase their product. The actual number will depend on the price paid. So if your product sells at a low price point, then investors will be looking for essentially a larger number. So if you have a high price product with a longer sales cycle, then they will usually settle for a smaller number. So their question is, how do you increase your price point once they understand the market and keep the current customers, allowing them to scale?
Oof, okay. So yeah. there's some complexity in that, and you know, I'm cautious of time, but first off, I nearly wouldn't 100% agree with the statement in the question. You know, I know investors are obviously looking for, you know, a lot of time in B2C, like growth capability. So your number of people on your platform, and then obviously your MRR or ARR. But I don't necessarily know whether, you know, a higher price point necessarily constitutes the longer sales cycle. It does, you know, it is a barrier for sure. And I understand when you're first getting in, you want to reduce those barriers as much as you can. But for me, it's more so about the value and the process when it comes to pricing. Now, we've also done our fair share of, you know, getting in the door and reducing prices when we can. And it's a great question because, you know, once you do get in and establish some level of price point, and a lot of the time you're probably undervaluing yourself because again, the price isn't necessarily associated to the longevity or that sales cycle. But look, on a tactical sense, there's mechanisms, you know, and I think one, really just building more value into your product is the best way to increase price. So one, having on a sales and marketing sense or sales sense, you know, a strong understanding of your product and, you know, the features within it and the commercials associated to those features. Then it's about building more value into the features as you go. So you really have a mechanism to increase that price point. Now, there's also, I guess, on a contractual level, it's probably a good thing to think a little bit about, call it like commercialization strategy, and I don't know whether these are the right words, but contract realization strategies. Yeah. So if you are standing at a smaller zone, you know, you want to have mechanisms to ensure that one, you're either pushing the provider to hit those milestones and they're kind of brought into the contracts at the early stage, or you're really using some of the general sales levers to increase the value. Now, again, investors are after monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue, but that's not to say that you can't increase revenue through consulting services or professional services. But again, look, I think, you know, having a look at ensuring that you have a very robust commercial model that understands, you know, that contractual side of things, but also the value realization of new features and new products is really quite important. But, you know, also it took us quite a while to get our heads around those kind of levers and mechanisms. I think that's something we've kind of enjoyed in the last few years as we've matured a little bit as a group.
Yeah, and I guess it's like, don't be scared. If it's not working, change your price point. Like, you're not setting a concrete. And I think that's like, it's such a scary thing for a startup to go, look, this is it. This is the decision that we've made and this is how we have to stay. Like you need to market test and understand that if it's not reaching that price point with that provider, and allow for that sliding scale.
Yeah, you really don't, because you don't even know the ROI before you put it in, you know, and like what the value return on it. And, you know, a lot of the time, like we were like overpriced when we first got into the sector. And even our, one of the things we took away from Care Factor, a big shout out to those guys, was, you know, the business model canvases and looking at, you know, having a look at our different business models, having a look at our different revenue streams and tweaking those, you know, in line to what we were offering. Yeah, and so it's something, I think you're 100% correct. I don't think it's something that you can know on day one. And you really, you know, again, it goes back to similar, you know, like that lean startup mentality, test and learn before you deploy as much as you can. Ask people, ask questions. You know, I remember in the early days of Hayylo, I picked up the phone and spoke to 450 providers, and I was selling them different things. You know, I was pitching in different concepts on the phone. I was throwing price points out there and trying to gauge understanding, like use the tools that you've got. And then as you get in and get the projects moving, you obviously have that opportunity to set the ROIs and understand really the value your product's providing to the sector.
Yeah, excellent. I love it. Awesome insights. So next one, how do you break, well, I guess we kind of answered that. How do you kind of break into a click industry where you have to know people to get your startup into an organization to facilitate that pilot? And I think that's the key thing, is getting in there. And if they're in the earlier stages, going on that co-design journey with them and allowing that provider to come on that journey with them so they understand the objective of what they're trying to achieve to improve that level of care.
Yeah, look, I definitely agree. I think the first step to it, you know, again, it's relationships, and obviously your product needs to be solving a problem that there is a need for, that there is actually a problem there. I think there's a lot of nice to have in the sector, and a lot of groups that kind of have concepts that are nice, but are they bringing economic value? Are they reducing costs or increasing well-being, or whatever the metric that you are trying to follow is? But then I think at the same time, look, you're right, that kind of co-design mentality is a great mentality to get in the door. There is dangers around that because you know, they call it in the sector the proof of concept graveyard, where a lot of companies will get in and younger companies will spend a lot of money setting up those pilots, but if they don't have, call it the change management maturity, those pilots can drop because providers are very busy. You know, they're very reactionary. They've got a lot on their hands with government re-regulation and, you know, COVID and services being delivered into the community. It's hard for them sometimes to think about those things that make a pilot work. So one, the relationship is, and the brand and the product will get you in the door, but I think the operation of the technology is probably more important in a sense. You should be able to get in the door. The sector is very open to conversations about innovation, you know, yet actually deploying something, getting it to scale, getting it to work are two very different kind of conversations.
And do you think in the immature stages that there's a definite risk that if you don't know the clear objective of what you're trying to achieve, that you can be directed in a way that wasn't necessarily the vision for your company as well? When a large provider comes in and goes, hey, we actually need this, and then the pathway goes like this to that. So I guess, how do you, as a startup that definitely would have been through conversations like that, how do you stay on that road?
That's a problem we still face today. I don't think that ever changes. You know, everyone's wanting to solve all the problems and fix all the things and future-proof themselves. And I think it's been very, you know, and look, it's easier for us to say these days because we have a very concise core product that works and provides value and sells. But in the early days, you are looking for that silver bullet, so to speak. In a way, there isn't one, you know, and it is a combination of a lot of different things together. You know, and I guess it is just a hard one. It's one of those late night conversations that you have usually with the founder executive group of the company around, is this worth taking a punt on? Is this worth building this new feature? What's that going to take? What's the potential return on that? And I think it's just a matter of really being close to that, close to the need. Does it align to your roadmap? Does it align to our objective? I think for us, you know, we're very value focused as an organization. We lean in on not just our company values, but the founder values as people. And, you know, very much like, is this aligned to what we're trying to achieve? And hard to do when you're younger, but sometimes it's good to say no, you know, and that's something that we're still trying to learn today, funnily enough.
Oh, that's great. I think everyone struggles with that. And that's like even larger organizations. So the client wants something completely outside of the realm that they're not able to do, but they still try and do it. So it's not just in startup land, it's across.
No, and you want to, like, you got to take, you know, startups, there's a risk game. So you also want to lean in a little bit and take those risks occasionally and, you know, get yourself in some hot water and make sure you go out and execute that thing. So I encourage people to push the envelope a little bit as well.
Yeah, and don't be scared to fail. And I think if you're in startup land and you are scared to fail, you're really in the wrong place.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that goes back to the relationship concept, because if you've built the right relationships with the right stakeholders across the organization, failing becomes part of the equation, so to speak. And you just, as long as you can prepare everyone for that, which is, you know, in community services is really hard because, you know, the sector doesn't like change generally. So you have to very much help people through that and help them through those steps.
Fantastic. Next one. As a startup that needs to remain lean, how do you know which position to onboard to achieve growth and scalability?
Oh, you hit me today. Look, it's an interesting question. I think it goes back again to the stage that you are as a startup. I think in the early days it was really about, you know, finding the Renaissance people, finding those, you know, all hats that can wear a bunch of different things and kind of had that, you know, that hustler mentality in them that will just go and find the answer to things and get the work done. And, you know, so I think in the early days, it was very much just around finding people that kind of aligned to our vision and could work at that fast pace and knew that they would go and get that work done. As we've evolved and matured, you know, like everything we do at Hayylo, we follow the data. We have a look at things like where is the most time being spent across the organization, what value would that hire return, you know, and I think that's, again, it's like your P&Ls, we constantly re-look at the shaping of the team and who they were and the personality that would need in that spot. So I just think, you know, hiring, you know, outside of that, you know, that right type of person. These days, we very much just kind of use the data. And I remember when Hayylo first started, you know, we were going to go and hire a head of marketing. That was the kind of first big position we were going to fill, you know, position that we're earning far more than Greg and I as two co-founders. But when we looked at the data, the data actually showed that our top of funnel activity was doing okay. We had a great brand presence. We were getting a good amount of leads to fill the sales funnel up. Where the gap fell was actually within the sales world and the consideration world of the pipeline. So realized that it was an investment in a salesperson that was actually going to help us move that whole pipeline forward. And obviously there's other conversations going on around product and what have you at the same time. But yeah, it was really looking at the data to understand where are we slowing down? Where are we being hurt? Where is that point where things are starting to, you know, back up within the organization, and let's kind of open that artery up a little bit so we can move again.
Yeah, I love it. And it's so true. And so many people would be experiencing that. But they're going back to the data to understand where they are lacking in areas or slowing down. It's absolutely important to be able to act on that and understand and interpret that data to effectively make those decisions.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, you know, in the early days, you know, I think kind of goes back to that scalability conversation, is just around, you know, we pulled the trigger very early on quite sophisticated tool sets, technology that would enable us to gain insight, gain data, scale the technology, scale the team. Like, we invested heavily in data early in the piece so we could at least see what's going on. It's an evolution. It's always still going, even across our platform. It's something we're constantly reinventing and envisioning for the providers themselves. But yeah, very much, you know, you need to be able to, again, like you know, Greg said in the webinar, you know, communication creates awareness, data creates awareness, you know, awareness changes behavior. So that's really what we try to focus on at Hayylo.
Excellent. So, excuse me, what are some of the incubators that you suggest that startups could kind of approach and apply for?
So, look, we might not be the right group to talk about these things. I will do the plug in a second, but we were a funny group. Greg and I and the early Hayylo team, we didn't go down that startup road. I don't know whether we considered ourselves a startup at the time, probably because we didn't know what we were at the time. So we very much just kind of focused on being a business and, you know, invested some money in and went out and just started to kind of build stuff. So, you know, for us though, as we did progress, you know, we kind of missed that early incubator accelerator kind of process at the start. I'm trying to recall whether there was any in the first 3 years or 4 years. Not that I recall, but anyway, I could be doing someone a disjustice, but an injustice. But Care Factor though for us was pivotal. It was that program for us really one allowed us to spend a little bit of time on the business, not in the business, and start to question some of the things that we held as truth, and start to dig in a little bit to areas of the business that we didn't see. And it really allowed us to gain a level of maturity around the way we approached the company and our product, and that was just core. That's really what we went in there looking for. But the other side of it all was, one, the relationships, the opportunities to talk to providers. That was amazing. Getting like direct feedback from providers through the Care Factor program, something they did superbly well. And the output of that, you know, for us has been investment, it's been customers, it's been connections, and it's also been a network of other startups that we're now talking to around integration capabilities and partner projects and reseller agreements and all those fun things that come along with that network. So Care Factor, Care Factor, Care Factor. So that's my plug to those guys. But you know, it really was amazing. To be honest with you, I know there's a bunch of others out there, and you know, I think for any young group, those kind of things are great to invest in if you have that time to you know, really challenge your idea and have a cohort of people that will push back a little bit around what you're doing and what you're thinking.
Excellent. And yeah, I can definitely plug Care Factor. I think it's an incredible program, and even how they've kind of pivoted onto like through digital means and how they're still able to get that engagement there. They have done an absolutely incredible job. So well done, Heath and team. Yeah,
well done, guys. I actually presented the Hayylo story at Care Factor this year. We won the Care Factor in, again, I think it was late 2019. I lost a year there somewhere. So, and yeah, it was just an amazing opportunity to get up and tell our story and share some insights, and hopefully everyone got a little bit of value out of that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the pitch day in March. I think there's some really good teams in there this year.
It's amazing the growth across the sector, just around the technology and startups in general. It's really, really exciting time.
I agree. Well, thank you so much, Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you as part of the Year of the Creative 2021. If there's one thing that you could leave with the startup audience, what would it be?
So for me at the moment, it's well-being. You know, it's funny. I can see a little bit of airtime. You know, you was this the year of the creative for you, and we're talking about this being the year of well-being. And I think, you know, when we talk about relationships, we talk about value, we talk about, you know, the hard uphill journey that these startups are, you know, looking after your mental health and looking after your well-being, your family connections, you know, trying to not get, and it is all encompassing, but trying to create balance within the journey is really important. Like, you know, it's a stressful yet very rewarding journey, but it can be detrimental to your health and your relationships and those kind of things. And I think making sure that you fill the cup personally, you know, as you go, enables you to work harder, work better, work smarter. And it's, you know, I think what we're seeing with COVID and the lockdowns, you know, the ability to really focus on that more kind of emotional side of business, that EQ side of business is something that's becoming more prevalent. And, you know, people need to be cautious of that and be aware of that it is a very high stress kind of world, and you put a lot on the plate, and it's important to ensure that you you know, you fill that cup up.
Absolutely, and it's so important. Mental health, there's such a prevalence of mental health conditions as a result of COVID, and exacerbated when you are in that startup plan and you are dependent on that next week, that next contract. So thank you, and I'm glad you have come out the other side of it, although still kind of in lockdown right now.
A few days left.
Yeah, you guys, yeah, I'm super excited to watch Hayylo grow this year, and especially with Meg now coming on board. Yeah, you guys have got an amazing future ahead of you, and I'm super excited to watch you grow.
Thanks so much, Beck. Great to see you again.
Thank you.